Hello YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I want to talk with you about the best filtration for an African Cichlid tank. And as you folks know, I run several tanks. I run the tank you see here behind me, which has on it a good size sump system, which adds a lot of water volume and helps to really turn over the tank quite a bit with a 1,000 gallon per hour pump. A Rio pump on there. I also have on it a Sun 704B filled with sponges, which work strictly as mechanical filtration. I also have, as you know, a 100 gallon tank, and on that tank I have a Fluval FX6. A Fluval FX6 with a sponge, a pre-filter sponge that I picked up from Corey at the co-op on the intake. And that is the only filter I have on that tank. I also have a 60 gallon grow out tank, my Juvie Hap Nation tank, and on this tank what I have is a combination of canisters and a hang on back. I have two Sun 302s, both with sponge pre-filters on the intakes. And I have a Marineland, I believe it's an Emperor 400 Duo Bio Wheel also running on that tank. So it's very heavily filtered with 3 separate systems. So I have lots of redundancy on that one, and I have no redundancy, just one very reliable, very large canister on the 100, and of course some redundancy in the 150 behind me. So let's talk about filtration in an African Cichlid tank, and I certainly want to hear your take on it. Be sure to share your comments below. Let's get right into it. So what are the factors that we have to consider when we're thinking about filtering a cichlid tank? Well, very often cichlid keepers tend to overstock. They tend to overstock their tanks. They do that very often because they feel it curbs aggression. So you really have a couple choices with cichlids. You either need to provide them with a very large tank that allows them to have a lot of room to swim and not feel too like their territory is being threatened too much, or you need to provide so much activity and so many tank mates that really it's hard for the fish to just pick on one fish without being distracted by a large number of other fish. So what this means is that normally, and this is not always the case, you would not necessarily consider the tank behind me here an overstocked tank, but by 100 you might consider it overstocked, or at least highly stocked. So what you need, and what I would recommend, is a filtration system that's going to run your water through filtration, in particular mechanical media, very, very frequently. So in other words, good gallon per hour, good tank turnover. The rule of thumb tends to be between 5 and 10 times the volume of the tank each hour. So I should be getting about 1,500 gallons or more, or somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 gallons of turnover in the tank behind me. The pump in the sump is rated at about just over, right around 1,000 gallons an hour. And then the Sun is rated, I believe, at around over 500 gallons an hour. Keep in mind that the pump in the sump does lose some gallons per hour in what is called the head pressure, or lifting the water up to the tank. So in reality, it's probably closer to 700, and once you fill a canister with media, it does tend to slow down, so that one has realistically probably 350 to 400 gallons per hour. So I'm in that sweet spot, over 1,000, probably 1,200 gallons per hour of water turnover, which means that all the water in this tank is running through media, at least about 7, maybe 6 or 7 times an hour, and somewhere in that 5 to 10 zone. It's going to fall somewhere in there, and that I feel is important for a couple reasons. One, because of course we do stock heavily, and two, cichlids do produce a tremendous amount of waste. I think as far as fish go, they're probably at the top in the tropical fish area. So what you're looking for is a lot of water turnover, and you're looking for, of course, a system that is going to make it easy to do maintenance because of that waste production. So this would tend to move me away, when you think about it, it would tend to move me away from canisters, which require a lot of work to crack them open, to work on them, and would move me in the direction of sumps, which are very easy to reach into and to work on. However, for a lot of us, sumps are simply not practical, and a lot of us have tanks that are 40, 60 gallons, even 125, might be a little bit on the small side for a sump. And so for those who have those kind of tanks, a hang-on back, a large hang-on back, is very easy to work on. But maybe you don't want something hanging on the back of your tank, something that big, and maybe you don't want the necessarily the noise of the water splashing that a hang-on back creates. And so that takes us all the way back to canisters. So canisters, such as the Fluval FX6 or a Eheim Pro or something like a Sun 704 or a Sun 3000, canisters are a very good alternative if, and this is something that those of you who follow my channel know, if you pre-filter them. Because what the pre-filter will do is actually allow you to spread out the amount of time between having to crack open those canisters. I'm thinking in the neighborhood of about 6 months with pre-filtered canisters. I'm running 2 experiments right now. I have a pre-filter, as you know, on my Fluval FX6, and I have pre-filters on both the Sun 302s on the 60 gallon. And I suspect that those canisters will all stay pretty clean all the way out to about 6 months. So, what's my conclusion? My conclusion is that if your tank is upwards of 150, you should seriously consider a sump or a sump canister combination like what I have on this tank behind me. If you're in a smaller setup, 125 on down, I would say canisters, dual canisters, or a large or a very powerful canister like an FX6 with pre-filters. Pre-filters covering the intake with a sponge. That's my conclusion. Some of you are going to say, well, you'd prefer a large hang-on back. And I get it. You know, there's some very good high quality hang-on backs out there. They're very easy to work on, that hold a lot of media. I personally like hang-on back filters. They're very easy to work on. The only reason I actually moved over into canisters to begin with was because one of my tanks was in a room where there was TV, and I didn't like the splashing sound of the canister as the water would cascade into the tank. I wanted a quieter setup. So if noise is a consideration, certainly canisters are a very good way to go because they are extremely quiet. Okay, so those are my 2 cents on the best filtration for a cichlid tank. I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below. Hit that bell, become part of that convo gang. We all learn from each other, and I want to hear what your comments are on filtration, what your thoughts are on it. Certainly tell me what you're running on your tank. I'm interested, and how it's worked out for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are appreciated. Don't forget to rate, share, and of course sub if you haven't already. Thank you.